Hello everybody, it's Julia here with part 2 of my Learn Tarot series. Today we're going to be having a look at the Magician, which is card number 1 of the Major Arcana. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Magician, then we're going to have a look at some of the cards from my tarot decks here. I've got 9 different tarot decks here that we can have a look at, because obviously the imagery on the cards gives you a slightly different interpretation or feel of that card. And then at the end, we're going to have a look at some questions, things that are useful for self-reflection, because I think really ultimately what the tarot does best is it's a fantastic tool for self-reflection. So, the Magician, card number 1. He is the male power of creation, of willpower and desire, which is the sun, but he's also represented by Mercury. He's a smooth talker. Mercury is the god of thieves. It could be said that when he moves through your psyche, a fire is being lit. This is the sun's fire energy and the Mercury energy coming together. To represent more than anything communication and directed will. He can manipulate people or situations for good or for selfish purposes. I shall hold this up here for you to have a look at while I'm talking. The 4 suits before him remind you of the 4 aces, which in tarot represent raw and undeveloped and undirected power. So the 4 suits, the cup, the pentacle, the sword and the wand there, they remind you of the 4 aces in tarot, which represent raw, undeveloped and undirected power. So when the Magician appears, he can remind you that you have all you need to start creating whatever you want. Love, life, money, career, solutions to anything. In his higher realms, being aligned to the will of spirit, which is then directed through the ego and manifests as wise counsel and conduct, as inspired communication, the ability to articulate thoughts and feelings clearly. It's kind of right speech, right action, originality, dexterity, creativity, willpower, imagination, self-confidence, unity of thought and emotion, and the ability to see a task through to completion. So they would all be qualities of the higher realms of the Magician. But in his lower realms, he can be blunt, ill-timed, there can be confused communication, he can be crafty, deceptive, there can be a sleight of hand, weakness of will, indecision, insecurity, a lack of imagination, manipulation, the use of your gifts or talents for destructive ends. So, as I said, we've got a lot of different cards here, but I think the thing to remember really, primarily with the Magician, is, as I said, he's ruled by the sun and by Mercury, which would tell you a lot about him. As I said, it's willpower, desire, and communication that influences the energy of the Magician. So, what have we got here? We've got the original Rider-Waite Magician here, which is what I think a traditional magician would look like to a lot of people here. He's here with his table, with all of his suits on the table before him. So he's got everything that he needs there to start manifesting and to start creating new things. He's got the symbol of infinity above his head. So this is a traditional Rider-Waite Magician here. I also have the Tarot of the New Vision here, which gives you a slightly different perspective of the Magician. This is looking to see what he sees. So this is behind the Magician. And you can see here he's not just practicing on his own, which you might think from this card that he was just somewhere by himself doing his thing, but actually he's in front of a crowd of people. And I would imagine that this kind of energy might make you think about sort of the people that used to go around with all their little cures and performing miracles to a crowd. And I think the monkey behind him does imply some kind of sleight of hand, perhaps some kind of trickery, a slight deception. You know, that old thing in magic, while you're looking this way, he's doing something that way. It could be that kind of energy, really, couldn't it? But he's a smooth talker. And that's how he can manipulate people, I guess, with his communication, isn't it? So we've done those two. We also have an Anna Kay magician here, which is quite similar, actually. This is a very old-fashioned sort of wizard-like magician who again has his table, his altar, with his suits there, with his pentacles, his sword, his wand and his cup. And he's creating magic. He's creating things with his force of will. It's really inspired willpower, isn't it? He's creating things just through his sheer force of will, really, there, I would say. We have a similar thing, I guess, going on here in the Light Seekers deck, although this is a much more contemporary, modern tarot deck. We can still see a very similar energy here, can't we? This is the force of somebody's will. He has the infinity symbol on his head. And with his hands and with his mind, he is directing the force of his energy to create and manifest other things. Yeah. We have the same going on here with the cat from my Gorgeous Mystical Cats tarot. The cat here has everything that he needs in front of him, and with his paws he is creating magic. I think I remember reading in the book that it said that he was creating a spell here. And I guess that's ultimately what all of these magicians are doing, isn't it? Is that they're creating a spell. They're creating something with their willpower, with their thoughts, with their mind. They're manipulating energy to create something. So I think that's the last of those particular tarot cards. We then have, this is my gorgeous Visconti deck from 1975. This is an original deck. And this artwork was done in the sort of late 15th century, I think I remember from reading. And it shows a slightly different interpretation of the magician, because you don't often see a magician sitting down. A magician is usually standing. But he sat at a table. He's still got, I think, all of the things that he needs to create things with, but I don't know why, but this card just makes me think more of the Mercury side of the magician, in that it's like he's about to sit down and write something. Because I think back in the 15th century, the ability to write and communicate articulately would have been seen as a very powerful thing. I think if you were able to write articulately and well in that time, you probably would have been perceived as something a little bit special. somebody who could create magic or miracles, I guess. I think writing and expressing yourself in communication would have been a much bigger deal back then, because not so many people were able to write. So I think that's what's going on there, but I don't know. That's just my feeling and my interpretation of that card. We then have Littlefinger here in the Game of Thrones tarot, which I always wish they hadn't made Littlefinger Peter Baelish, the magician, because I just don't like him. I think he was one of the most despicable characters in Game of Thrones, and he was an arch manipulator. I think in this card here he wears rings on his little fingers which represent Mercury. He's got the infinity symbol above his head. He's also got all the suits pictured behind him. But essentially I would say that Littlefinger manifested the lower realms of the magician much more than the higher realms, really. Certainly crafty, deceptive, manipulative, the use of your gifts and talents and willpower for destructive ends. He was a very selfish man who was trying to manipulate people around him for wealth and power. So, yeah, that one's a very different interpretation of the magician. And then we have these two cards here, which are extremely different, aren't they? This one is from the Psychic Tarot deck, and this one is from my Osho Zen Tarot. The Psychic Tarot card here, I think, is more shaman-y, isn't it, in its energy. This is really showing that most of the magic, most of the power of the magician is focused in his higher chakras, is focused in his mind, in his ability to direct his force of will, I would say there. And the Osho Zen card here is completely different from all of them. Again, I don't know for sure, but I have the feeling here with this card really that this person here is sat sort of contemplating the universe. They're sat contemplating their place in the world. This card is called Existence. And I think what this talks to us of is, because the Magician card is all about ego. It's the card of the individual. It's card number 1, so it's the card of the individual and of the individual ego and the ability to direct the willpower and energy of the individual to make things happen. And I think what this card here, because this Osho Zen is a Buddhist inspired deck, I think what this card here is reminding us is that actually we are part of everything. We're all part of everything. It's important not to get too caught up in the I, in the individual, in the ego, and to remember that we are a part of everything. We're a part of the universe. What affects us affects other people, affects the planet, affects the universe. Let's just have a quick little look at the Osho Zen book here, actually. Let's see what it says. So the naked figure sits on the lotus leaf of perfection, gazing at the beauty of the night sky. She knows that home is not a physical place in the outside world, but an inner quality of relaxation and acceptance. The stars, the rocks, the trees, the flowers, the fish and birds are all our brothers and sisters in this dance of life. We human beings tend to forget this as we pursue our own private agendas and believe we must fight to get what we need. But ultimately, our sense of separateness is just an illusion, manufactured by the narrow preoccupations of the mind. So now is the time to look at whether you're allowing yourself to receive the extraordinary gift of feeling at home wherever you are. If you are, be sure to take time to savour it so that you can deepen it and remain that feeling with you. If on the other hand you've been feeling like the world is out to get you, it's time to take a break, go outside and look at the stars. So that really is almost the opposite, isn't it, of what many of these other tarot cards here are saying to us, because everything about these other tarot cards is about getting what you want, getting what you need, making things happen, creating things, creating the kind of world that you want for yourself. Whereas in this deck, it's kind of saying to you, well, you're part of everything. Just try to feel at home wherever you are. I think Buddhism is often telling us to stop searching, to stop looking, to be mindful, to be in the moment, to savour what we have, to appreciate what we have, and to be grateful for what we have. I think is probably the message of this card, that we're not accidental, that we're here for a reason, and we should try to make the most of that, really. So yeah, so lots of different interpretations of these cards, which obviously if you were to go by the guidebooks, you would probably interpret all of these cards, possibly except for this one, because it is so different, being a Buddhist inspired tarot. But with the rest of them, you would probably interpret them in much the same way if you were to look at the guidebook. But I think if you were to absorb the imagery and to really feel it and to think about it, I think that you would see that they all have quite different meanings and will all lead your readings and your cards in slightly different directions. So I've got some questions here that I wrote out for the Magician, and we've got here, what are you focusing your attention on? Are your objectives clear? What skills and abilities are needed in this situation? How are you communicating with others? Can you articulate your thoughts and feelings articulately and effectively? What do you want others to see or believe about you? Because obviously in these cards here, there's, like this one for instance, there's a little bit of deception here, isn't there? Who the Magician is projecting out into the world here is not entirely who he is really. Are you working towards your higher good? And I think that that's probably the main question to ask yourself out of all of these, really, when we're looking at the Magician's energy, because obviously in its lower realms, that energy can lead us astray sometimes to manipulate other people or to try to get what we want in life through deceptive means. I think if you can ask yourself the question, is this for my higher good? And you can answer that honestly, then you're probably on the right path and you're probably doing the right thing. So yeah, the Magician. Where are you focusing your attention? Are your objectives clear? What skills and abilities do you need for this situation? How well are you communicating with others? Do you articulate your thoughts and feelings effectively? What do you want others to see or believe about you, and why, I guess, is a good question, isn't it? And are you working towards your higher good? So there we go. I hope that that was helpful, and I will be back again soon with the next card in the series, which will be the High Priestess. So take care, and I will see you soon. Thank you.